We just want to bring you right now, and it's actually right near here. Yes. New York City officials confirming an explosion near 42nd Street and 8th Avenue. We should tell you right now, we are on
right there.
Literally Broadway, 7th Avenue here,
so
and just 1 block over. Multiple ambulances have been requested.
First news this morning was obviously very frightening and disturbing. When you hear about a bomb in the subway station, which is in many ways one of our worst nightmares. So everyone worked together. There was an explosion. The police commissioner will go over the details. It was an effectively low-tech device. There were several injuries, we hope minor, and it was handled extraordinarily well. This is New York, and we all pitched together, and we are a savvy people, and we keep our eyes open, and that's what See Something, Say Something is all about. And we have the best law enforcement on the globe, and we're all working together extraordinarily well.
Jim, let's get to Bitcoin, because what would a morning be without having our typical conversation about Bitcoin? This currency, cryptocurrency, or whatever else you want to call it, higher. This after, of course, futures were launched last night, debuting with a gain of more than 20%. The futures are on the CBOE. They triggered at least 2 trading halts with that surge in prices.
Well, I was hoping that we get some price discovery. If this is the price discovery, then it can head much higher. My issue has been how much did they really trade last night? But there are so many people, David, who, and some retail and some institutional, who truly want Bitcoin to go higher, that they were over to overwhelm any short interest, short attempts to drive it down. This is a very big victory for Bitcoin last night, and I think a lot of people felt it would be inconceivable that when you had a two-sided market that someone would come in. It's hard to accept Bitcoin as a currency. We talked about it at my bar this weekend because, well, did we lose money or make money on that beer sale? We don't know.
We don't know.
The NFL games are going to be much more accessible on mobile devices, and that's something that we think our fans will really enjoy. We see more and more of our fans moving to new devices, particularly their phone, to get content. And we are going to work together to not only stream games, but also bring other content across a number of great media properties. Whatever we do is complementary with a network partner. So we think this is reaching consumers that aren't actually watching on television. They're looking to watch on other devices. And we want to make sure that we're there. That's part of the changing television landscape and the media landscape, that we need to be in those places.
But if I'm broadcasting the game on linear and he's broadcasting the game on mobile, over time, given the way television is going, more people are going to watch. And how's that going to affect my...
That's happening regardless, Andrew, right? I mean, you see the linear model. Yeah, look, we've been predicting this for years, that it's beginning to break down.
Right.
You see more and more, especially the younger generation, never had service into their homes. So they don't have access to the NFL, and this gives them access. So I think we work very complementary.
Our guest host this morning, Chamath Palihapitiya, is the founder of Social Capital, which manages more than $2.5 billion in assets. You made some truly critical comments about Facebook, really upending children and our society. Explain what you said at the time.
So what I said was, I think the tools that have been created today are starting to erode the social fabric of how society works. And what I meant by that is the following thing. Today, we live in a world now where it is easy to confuse truth and popularity. And you can use money to amplify whatever you believe and get people to believe that what is popular is now truthful and what is not popular may not be truthful.
What Facebook is trying to tap into is more and more earnings. I think these companies, to be blunt, are doing their job and they're growing earnings. The people who aren't doing their jobs are us, because we're not electing officials that hold these companies to the same standards. If you were weaponized by an intelligence group of Russia, I think there's a chance the next day they might have shut the network down. But for some reason, we give these companies a hall pass. I don't know if any of you have kids, but try and take your iPad away from your kid, and you literally see your 7-year-old boy think memo to self, must kill dad. Yeah. And yet these companies don't have warning labels on them. If an ice cream was making teenagers depressed and increasing suicide, can you imagine the labeling and studies we'd have around that? We're finding this out about social media, But for some reason, they play by a different set of rules because we worship at the altar of innovators and shareholder value. These guys get the mother of all hall passes.
The tax plan being hammered out in D.C. Elon Moy is live in Capitol Hill. Elon.
Melissa, Senator Rand Paul raising new alarms over the national debt as lawmakers face a December 22nd deadline to keep the government running.
I promised Kentucky to vote against reckless deficit spending, and I will do just that. Count me as a no on any budget-busting spending bill.
Now, it was unclear at first if he was referring specifically to those year-end spending negotiations or perhaps to the tax bill, which some analysis have shown could add as much as $1 trillion to the national debt. But Senator Rand Paul put out another tweet in which he said tax cuts, people keeping more of their money, are never the problem. The problem is spending. We should obey our rules, stop the deficit spending, and shrink government.
I sat down earlier today with the famed billionaire investor, Mr. Druckenmiller. We covered a lot of ground from his FANG holdings to, yes, Bitcoin and tax reform and more. But his central point ahead of the Fed's press conference and interest rate decision tomorrow, guys, is that central banks need to stop obsessing about reaching that 2% inflation target because they're creating a financial bubble far more likely to push us into deflation than a 1% CPI is. Listen.
The way you create deflation is you create an asset bubble. In fact, frankly, if I was Darth Vader of the financial world and decided I'm going to do this nasty thing and create deflation, I would do exactly what the central banks are doing now.
Wow.
Misallocate resources, create an asset bubble, and then deal with the consequences down the road.
So the biggest risk of deflation right now is not that the inflation rate is where it is or that they need to keep rates low. It's more that if they keep rates low too cautiously, the bubble leads to their worst nightmare.
The longer this goes on, the worse it's going to be. I will believe this till I die. If they had moved earlier and more aggressively in the early 2000s, we would have had a recession in 08, 09, but not a financial crisis. And as you know, we've had a lot of recessions the last century, and we're still here. We don't need another financial crisis. So the sooner they can stop what's going on in every market we've discussed, the better.
Story of the morning, the closely watched Senate race in Alabama. Democrat Doug Jones is the apparent winner there, although Republican Roy Moore is not conceding just yet. John Harwood joins us this morning from Birmingham. He's got that story. Good morning to John.
Good morning, Andrew. This was a very big victory for the Democratic Party. First time they've won a United States Senate race in Alabama in 25 years, and a big defeat for President Trump and his party. And the candidate came out. This is a man who had prosecuted Klansmen for the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church during the 1960s and the Civil Rights Movement. And he quoted Martin Luther King and said that this was a victory for justice.
Tonight is a night for rejoicing. Because as Dr. King said, as Dr. King liked to quote, the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice.
I want to thank the incredible members of the House and Senate who have been working so hard. We're very, very close to a historic legislative victory, the likes of which rarely has this country seen. I think I can say, Kevin and Orrin, that we're getting very close, and I know a lot of the folks that we'd like to have here. We said, if you have your choice, stay back and get it done, right? They're all working and negotiating some final points, but we're very, very close.
Let's get reaction on what we just heard from President Trump at the Lawn Mowee on Reaction in Capitol Hill.
Well, Brian, what you saw was Republicans going to the president with a deal that they had hashed out before they left for that lunch. Senator Orrin Hatch, you saw sitting there with the president, told reporters before he left that, quote, we have reached an agreement. And the details of that agreement are pretty much in line with what we have been reporting, including a 21% corporate rate and a 37% top rate for individuals. One new piece of information we have been able to confirm is that the corporate alternative minimum tax looks like it will be out of the final version of the bill. That's according to two sources. Now, Hatch also said that he was confident he would have the votes to get this passed. And as you heard President Trump say, he didn't want to congratulate them too much just yet until this actually gets to his desk. But several senators who have been shaky in their support in the past that we talked to here on the Hill today say that they are still reserving judgment until they see the final version of the bill.
Let's get to Steve Leisman.
Federal Reserve raises interest rates 1/4 point to a new range of 1/4 to 1.5%. The Federal Reserve raising interest rates by 1/4 point to the new range of 1.25 to 1.5%.
Janet Yellen is at the podium, folks. Let's watch and listen.
Good afternoon. Today, the Federal Open Market Committee decided to raise the target range for the federal funds rate by 1/4 percentage point, bringing it to 1.25 to 1.5%. Our decision reflects our assessment that a gradual removal of monetary policy accommodation will sustain a strong labor market while fostering a return of inflation to 2%. And you asked about Bitcoin, and there I would simply say that Bitcoin at this time plays a very small role in the payment system. It is not a stable source of store of value, and it doesn't constitute legal tender. It is a highly speculative asset.
We finally got the deal that we've been talking about now for more than a month, of course. Disney buying those Fox assets that we've detailed time and again over this last, let's call it 5 weeks or so since we first brought the story to you of the talks between the two. It is a large deal, to say the least. Depends how you want to value the equity right now at current prices, and if you take in the considerations that minority interest, it's about $55 billion in equity. Let's get to the story itself, and let's get to the man behind it. Bob Iger now joins us from Disney headquarters. Good morning, Bob. Thank you for being with us.
Morning, David. Thank you. Good morning.
Let me start off with risk. You know, a deal of this nature, all deals, of course, come with an inherent amount of risk. You've done deals in the past, but nothing approaching the size of this, nothing approaching its scope in terms of geography with the international assets. And I know you'll make a different argument, but also on antitrust. And so I guess my question is, why is it worthwhile for Disney to undertake this risk, to give 25% of its stock to Fox shareholders for this deal?
Well, I think it has to start with the quality of the assets that we're buying. Rupert has managed over time to assemble just a stellar group of assets, and as you pointed out before I came on, they're global in nature. So we're getting high quality content, we're getting global reach, we're getting access to new technologies, and we're also getting great talent. In terms of what's the most compelling aspect of this, David, I think you have to look at the content that we're buying, you have to look at the global footprint, you have to look at the access that all of this is going to enable, and you have to look at the people.
Your reflections at this point. Did you think in that late summer conversation with Murdoch you'd ever actually get to this day announcing this enormous and really seismic deal?
No, that's a good question to ask. No, not really. I thought it was a long shot. But the more I thought about it, the more Rupert thought about it, the more we talked about it, the more it made sense. And when we were able to agree to the terms, somewhat complicated in nature, but still I think compelling, we got it done. And so I'm certainly excited to be here today. I think if you would ask me in August whether I would get to this point, I'm not sure I would have bet that I would have, but certainly glad that we have reached this agreement, and really looking forward to the future.
We have breaking news from Politico, which is reporting that House Speaker Paul Ryan plans to retire after 2018. The Politico story says that he has been meeting with two likely successors to describe the strategy after the midterm elections. However, Speaker Ryan was asked about this at his weekly press conference this morning. A reporter shouted out to him, do you see yourself quitting anytime soon? He said, no, I'm not, and the room sort of laughed. So Speaker Ryan appearing to deny any plans to leave office soon. But again, Politico reporting that he does plan to retire after 2018.
As expected, Tyler, the net neutrality vote has gone through. It has been overturned. Chairman Ajit Pai's proposal to overturn the Obama-era net neutrality rules has been approved by a vote of 3-2. There were two FCC commissioners dissenting. Ajit Pai just made the final comments in the meeting just now. He talked about restoring what he called a light touch framework, moving from Title II, which regulates the internet like a utility, back to Title I. He said this is the legal framework that governed the internet from Clinton to 2015, saying it was not going to destroy the internet, not going to end the internet as we know it. There is quite a bit of dissent and concern about this. We heard some of the commissioners before, namely Commissioner Mignon Clyburn, saying she's optimistic that this will be overturned, potentially reversed by Congress or vacated by a court. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens here. So a momentous day for internet companies and also the companies that stream video on the internet in this vote 3-2 to roll back the net neutrality rules. But the battle is certainly not yet over. Back over to you.
This went down straight on party lines, right? And isn't that traditionally what happens with a lot of these organizations?
This was
usually whoever's in power gets the majority of the people on the board, and then there's 2 minority dissenters.
Yes, this was very much expected. The vote today went down exactly as we had anticipated, with the exception of that weird moment where the room was vacated for a security concern. But it is worth noting that though the vote went down on party lines, this has become a nonpartisan issue, and there are a number of states' attorney generals, as well as a number of both Republican and Democrats in Congress who have raised concerns about this and actually asked for the vote to be delayed. One of the reasons was they were concerned that some of the comments that were filed by the public were fake and they were done by bots or artificially, and there were some concerns that the vote should be delayed because of that. So this is not technically just a partisan issue based on the way that Congress has been tackling it.
Let's put it this way. There is absolutely no collusion. That has been proven. When you look at the committees, whether it's the Senate or the House, everybody my worst enemies, they walk out, they say, there is no collusion, but we'll continue to look. They're spending millions and millions of dollars. There is absolutely no collusion. I didn't make a phone call to Russia. I have nothing to do with Russia. Everybody knows it. That was a Democrat hoax. It was an excuse for losing the election, and it should have never been this way where they spent all these millions of dollars. So now even the Democrats admit there's no collusion. There is no collusion. That's it. And we got to get back to running a country. What we have found and what they have found after looking at this really scam is they found tremendous, whatever you want to call it, you're going to have to make up your own determination. But they found tremendous things on the other side. When you look at the Hillary Clinton investigation, it was, I've been saying it for a long time. That was a rigged system, folks. That was a rigged system. When you look at what they did with respect to the Hillary Clinton investigation, it was rigged. And there's never been anything like it in this country that we've ever found before. It's very, very sad.
Call with Vladimir Putin.
It was great. He said very nice things about what I've done for this country in terms of the economy. Then he said also some negative things in terms of what's going on elsewhere. But the primary point was to talk about North Korea, because we would love to have his help on North Korea. China's helping, Russia's not helping. We'd like to have Russia's help. Very important.
Ask you about Michael Flynn. Would you consider a pardon for Michael Flynn?
I don't want to talk about pardons for Michael Flynn yet. We'll see what happens. Let's see. I can say this. When you look at what's gone on with the FBI and with the Justice Department, people are very, very angry. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
The Last Jedi is expected to be the biggest film of the year. Early estimates put last night's box office take at as much as $45 million in North America. That would make it second only to Force Awakens. This, of course, has been fueled by positive reviews. It has a strong 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. And Last Jedi is Fandango's #2 pre-seller of all time. Last Jedi is projected to bring in more than $200 million in the North American box office this weekend alone. That's more than Rogue One's $155 million opening last year, but down from the record $248 million that The Force Awakens brought in on its opening weekend 2 years ago. Now, Star Wars isn't just a force for Disney's studio. It's also a massive merchandising operation expected to drive about $3 billion in toys and licensed products
this year, according to TTPM. Plus, Disney is betting big on Star Wars driving traffic to its parks. It's investing over $1 billion in the 2 Star Wars lands that are opening in Orlando and Anaheim in 2019. Now, the Disney-Fox deal will also bring all the Star Wars movies together under one roof. Fox owns the rights to the original trilogy, plus the more recent prequel trilogy. Not only could Disney re-release or package the films, but more importantly, it could include those movies in its Disney-branded streaming app, which is set to launch in fall of 2019. And Andrew, I don't know if Joe had Star Wars fatigue, but I saw the movie and I thought it was pretty fantastic.
If you're in the mood for a rocket launch, you might be in luck. SpaceX getting ready to send some cargo to the International Space Station for NASA. This time it's a used rocket. Morgan Brennan's at Post 9. You know more about this stuff than you've forgotten more than most people know.
Yeah, so this is SpaceX mission for NASA, and it is taking off right now. I think we should go ahead and listen in as this launch gets ready to take off.
Of the Falcon 9 rocket and Dragon spacecraft, filled with science and supplies for humanity's research outpost in low Earth orbit, the International Space Station.
SpaceX ascent commentary will be performed by several people. The propulsion engineer calls out propulsion events. The avionics engineer calls out avionics health and Dragon separation. The range coordinator calls out Air Force satellite control network acquisition and loss of signal. And the ground station specialist calls out the SpaceX antenna acquisition and loss of signal.
At 1 minute 5 seconds after liftoff, Falcon 9 reaches transonic speed. The vehicle will pass through an area of maximum dynamic pressure, known as max Q, at 1 minute.
Guys, this is SpaceX, Elon Musk's SpaceX, making history again this year, 2 ways. The main engines on this rocket, this is a recycled Falcon 9 rocket. It is the 4th time they have reflown a rocket this year. This is the first time for the government. This is the first time the government has done anything like this with a commercial company. The other way they're making history right now, this is their 17th launch of 2017. As far as I know, this is the most launches by a commercial company ever in 1 year.
And after getting delayed for weather, it's hard to imagine a more piercingly beautiful day than the one that we're seeing in that shot. Not a cloud in the sky.
In just a few minutes, this recycled booster is going to drop off. It's going to come back down to Earth, and it's going to attempt to land at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station again. That is going to create a sonic boom when it does that.
Talk about some of the math and physics behind landing these, because it's probably underappreciated just how hard it is to do.
Well, I'm not a rocket scientist, but what I can say is this is part of the reason SpaceX is now valued at $21.5 billion, according to Equidate, making it one of the most valuable privately held companies in the world, because of the fact that these engines can basically take themselves back down to land or to these drone ships that SpaceX has in sea. And this whole concept of reusability, this really is the future of space exploration, and SpaceX has very much been on the forefront of it. It's also worth noting that this launch just took place from Cape Canaveral's Launch Complex 40. This is where last September that Falcon 9 rocket from SpaceX exploded on the launch pad. So what a difference a little over a year makes.
Musk, of course, has been tweeting. He tweeted a link to the live webcast of this. Being awfully vocal with trolls in the past 24 hours. Some people critical of him. He wrote back, "You're an idiot." So his maverick style continues.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.